Having me. My name is Matt Gracie. This talk is investigating Windows endpoints with free tools. So first things first, who am I and what am I talking about? As I said, my name is Matt Gracie. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I work as a senior engineer on the professional services team at Security Onion Solutions. How many people have used Security Onion? All right, a lot of people. Good. So that's one of the tools I'm going to be talking about today. I actually just updated my demo environment with our current build, so there's some cool new stuff in there. In addition to working at Security Onion for about 15 years, I was a blue teamer. I worked in higher ed, financial, healthcare, a bunch of verticals. So this is sort of a amalgamation of different tricks and tips that I've picked up over the years for getting more visibility into the Windows endpoints on your environment, right? So we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff that's built into Windows, stuff that's free, stuff that you already have and might not be leveraging. And then we're going to talk about how to take that logging facility and push it into a platform like Security Onion so that you can use it for investigation and hunting. The demo that I have is actually pre-recorded because I gave an earlier version of this talk at another BSides and got bitten badly by the demo gods. So didn't want that to happen again. But I do have it on a VM on my laptop. So if you want to track me down this afternoon or tomorrow, I'm happy to go into more detail on anything that's not covered in the pre-recorded version. So what we want to do is what I call the virtuous detection cycle, right? We want to collect logs from all of our Windows endpoints. We want to put them into one place so that we can sort of parse them and normalize them and have one, God, I hate this term, one single pane of glass for hunting. We want to write detections for the IOCs that are in those logs. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be able to view all of your endpoint logs individually and determine whether there's something bad there, right? We want to be able to write detections. So if some TTP that we're aware of crops up in these logs, we're able to raise an alert. We want to use those alerts as a starting point to launch an investigation. And then we want to use those investigation results to build new detections, to define new IOCs, to figure out new ways to make our defense more robust, right? So that is the end goal here. So I'm going to step through this piece by piece, and we'll see how we can build up this cycle. Why endpoint logs? I mean, Security Onion's bread and butter is doing network monitoring, right? You plug it into a network tap, you run Zeek, you run Suricata, you get all your alerting through there. The problem is, it's not 2004 anymore. Most of the stuff on your network is going to be encrypted. You might be able to hunt on things like weird SSL certificates or DNS activity, at least till DNS over HTTPS really takes off. But a lot of the core stuff that you're looking for is going to be encrypted on the wire. It's not like back in the day when you could just look at your firewall logs and see what everyone was searching for on Google and then blackmail them later. It's tougher than that now. But obviously, by necessity, any data that an endpoint is processing is going to be unencrypted on that endpoint. So this gives us some additional visibility into what's happening. Even if all the network traffic is encrypted and we can't see the stuff coming in on the wire, we can see what's executing on the endpoint and sort of build it from that end instead. All right, so step one, what kind of logs can we pull out of our Windows endpoints? Well, the classic original recipe here is Windows event logs, right? Windows event logs came in with NT 3.5 and back office. Any other back office veterans out there? That was awful. It came in the classic flavors. You had your application log, your setup log, your system log, your security log. Those were available in all the flavors of NT, from 3.5 to 4, up through XP, and so on. In Windows 2000, Microsoft introduced per application log files. So stuff wouldn't necessarily get written into one of these 4. Instead, it could get written off into a special application-specific log file. So telemetry for some particular application, say your Symantec client, would be written into the Symantec log instead of the security log, right? Windows Vista, which did a lot of really important work, but everyone hates anyway, rewrote everything with an XML definition on the back end. And this was important because it sort of normalized everything, right? Everything got put into this more easily readable, parsable, machine understandable form. So everything got kind of standardized with Vista. And one of the things that's really important and I think underappreciated is that every event in a Windows log is assigned an event ID, that is a 4-digit code, and that event ID is consistent across platforms, right? If you have a successful login on a local account on a 2008 box, it's going to look the same as a successful login on a domain controller or a 2012 or a Windows 8.1 or whatever. They're all going to look the same. They're all going to normalize. So if we put all of our logs into one place, it doesn't really matter what the originating endpoint was. We're going to be able to use the same kind of rules and heuristics to search through them and hunt through them for evil. It's very handy. All right, so this is a typical Windows event. I'm sure you've all seen one of these before. This is from Contoso, which is everyone's favorite fictional company, and it is the screensaver being invoked on a box. This screenshot, obviously, I grabbed from Microsoft's website. This is what it looks like when you have an event and you're reviewing it in Event Viewer on your local machine, right? We've all gone in there, you look at Event Viewer, there's 12,000 different events, and you can page through them like this, or you can hit Control F if you're very patient, but it's not a super great interface. On the back end, this is what that event looks like. It's actually an XML construct, and you can see all of the different components are broken out into these XML attributes. You have the channel, that is what log did it come from. You have the computer that generated it. You have the target user SID, the target user name, the logon ID, what sort of session it was, etc. So all of this stuff is being generated on the back end in this XML form. It's just being sort of GUIfied for Event Viewer. So what we want to do is get this stuff into a state where we can view it kind of wholesale. Rather than looking at individual events in the Event Viewer, we want to put all of this into one platform where we can review it en masse. That's what we're going to do today. So Windows Event Forwarding, I believe, came in with 2003. Everybody knows about syslog forwarding in the Unix world, but a lot of people, even people who are currently running Windows networks, are not aware that this is built into Windows as part of the architecture. Windows Event Forwarding, if you have an Active Directory environment, you already have Windows Event Forwarding. It's super simple to set up. It's super straightforward. All it does is take the stuff that is on the local machines that you define and forward it to a central repository. It's called a subscription server. So, and then you write a GPO and you say, everybody go to this subscription server and get your logging directions, and it does. That's it. It's pretty straightforward. This is what a subscription looks like. So, in this case, it's a subscription for collecting event ID 1102. Anyone recognize that one? What is 1102? What's that? Very good. Windows security log cleared. You get an onion. So if you see 1102 somewhere on your network, that means that somebody has cleared the security log on a machine. They're probably trying to cover their tracks, right? All this tells us is that all 1102 tells us is that the log was cleared. It doesn't necessarily tell us how or necessarily tell us what user did it. We have to do more digging for that. But the event 1102 firing means that there's probably something nefarious going on in that box. We should probably investigate, right? Even if it's something programmatic, it's unlikely to be harmless if it's out there clearing the security log on you. This is what a group policy to instantiate Windows Event Forwarding looks like. It's very straightforward. It's basically one GPO command. You can see here we're saying for the server, sawmill.panopticon.local, port 5985, get your subscription information from that. And that's it. That's all you have to do is tell it, go to this subscription server and get the information about how you should be handling your logs. Right? Because it's a sawmill, handles logs. You get it. All right, so as you notice back here, the events that you're going to collect are configurable. That's what you get if you hit this button down here. The computer groups that are going to collect these logs, also configurable. So if you want to have separate profiles for events that you pull from domain controllers versus events you pull from database servers versus events you pull from dev versus prod, that's all configurable. It can all hook into your OUs or your Active Directory groups. So this can get very granular. Last time I stood this up on a large enterprise network, we actually had multiple collectors, just one for each environment. A collector for dev, a collector for prod, a collector for UAT, and one in the DMZ so that we didn't have to cross borders. It's pretty easy to stand up as long as you have, a little bit of capacity in VMware to spin up a couple extra servers to act as subscription servers. So when you're trying to decide what you're going to collect, what sort of data would be useful to alert on or to investigate on, there's a lot of good resources out there. This is from a paper called Monitoring What Matters by Jessica Payne. I think it was released at a Microsoft conference in, 2015, 2016. It was a few years ago. I would still recommend Googling for it because there's a lot of useful information in there about how the architecture works and how you can set it up in a lab. But she suggests, search for security event logs being cleared, right? That's usually something bad. Search for changes to groups like domain admins. Is a domain admin group membership changing? Is a new account being created and then added to that group? Are local accounts being changed? In a normal enterprise environment, all of the identity stuff is going to flow through Active Directory, right? It's going to be pretty rare that you'll see local accounts being stood up, especially local administrator accounts on individual endpoints. So if that happens, you want to log that and you want to write an alert around it and say, hey, something bad is going on here. I need to investigate. Again, local users being created or deleted on member systems, new services being installed. So if a new service suddenly spins up and starts listening on an endpoint, sometimes that is something like PS exec running for the first time. That installs a service the first time you run it. If you trigger on that, you might catch somebody running around in your environment with PS exec. Sometimes it is an update to something. Sometimes it is something nefarious. But if you have all of those new service events logged into one place, you can easily triage through them, take it to your administration team, figuring out which overambitious intern was doing something weird that looks like malware, and then take it from there. For other suggestions, we can ask our friends at the NSA, right? This is another document from about the same era, 2016, 2017, called Spotting the Adversary with Windows Event Log Monitoring. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. It's downloadable off the NSA GitHub, I believe. So look for changes to scheduled tasks, common persistence technique. Look for password resets happening, software installations. Anything that is installed on an endpoint using an MSI package is going to write events to the log. You can spit those out, process them, and figure out what's going on. Accounts being created or enabled. Honey tokens, other deception technology, right? You can create an account, call it something like super duper weekend admin backup account, give it all the privileges in the world, and set it to have no login hours, right? Then when somebody tries to log in with it, it lights up like a flare because nobody should be doing anything with that account, right? Old weird legacy accounts, RDP logins, especially RDP logins outside of your DMZ, where somebody decided to get real clever and work from home, right? So you can do all this stuff and forward all this into your central event collector and then alert on it, alarm on it, threat hunt on it. A couple other resources I found while I was prepping these slides. NSA has a repository in their GitHub called Event Forwarding Guidance. It's sort of a newer version of that Spotting the Adversary report, covers some new TTPs and new IOCs. Palantir also has something similar. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And I have no idea who Stress Boy is, but he was putting together a guide like this for Splunk. There was some useful stuff in there as well. So these are probably worth checking out if you're trying to build the configuration for your subscription server, figure out what kind of events you want to collect. Okay? All right, I think step 2 is next. So, oh, wait, no, not quite. All right. So Sysmon. Sysmon is basically Windows logging plus, right? So regular Windows event logs give you evidence that some action occurred. A screensaver was invoked, a security log was cleared, a login passed or failed, whatever. Sysmon gives you much deeper, more granular information about what's happening on a box. These logs are voluminous, right? Because you can report on every file that's opened, every file that's created, every process that's opened, every DNS query that's made. You can really see everything that's happening on a box. If you're in an enterprise environment that's real chatty, you're going to see a lot of stuff, right? So the recommendation for Sysmon is don't just turn it on and say spam me with all the events. Instead, you want to use a configuration. So something like this one from Swift on Security, I'm sure you all follow on Twitter. This is sort of a bunch of presets, configurations that may or may not be perfect for your environment, but it's a good starting point to start figuring out how you want to use Sysmon. It's a list of what file extensions you want to record if they're written to disk, right? What directories you want to modify if anything in them is changed. What process creation events you want to log. I mean, there's stuff on a standard, non-compromised Windows box that's starting and stopping all the time. You don't want to fill your logs up with all that false positive detritus. Instead, you just want to look for anomalous events. This is a really good one. There's a really good one by somebody help me out with his last name. Olaf. I'm sorry? Hartog, correct. Who said that? All right, you get an onion too. Yeah, those carry good. I like those. So, again, don't just turn it on, crank everything to 11, and assume that you'll be able to wade through it. You're going to end up filling up all your disk, and it's just going to frustrate everybody. Start with a configuration, but make sure you at least look through it and know what's in there, so if there's any blind spots, you can rectify it before it really goes into production. Another thing that you probably want to log in Windows is PowerShell, right? PowerShell is a pretty common attacker tool. I would suggest at least turning on script block logging in your environment that will log anything that's executed from the PowerShell command line, as well as the contents of scripts that are run. The nice thing is, because it's logging these into standard Windows events, it puts them into one of those application-specific log files that I was talking about, where they can just be packaged up and shipped like any other Windows event, right? So this can be really, really helpful, and we'll see that in the demo. Once you've got all your logs in one place on your subscription server where you've forwarded everything, there's some free Windows tools that you can use for analysis. The simplest one is Event Viewer, right? We saw the screenshot from that earlier. Excuse me. So Event Viewer is not a great tool for doing a thorough investigation. It's not really designed to do that, but it's good for confirming simple things. Do I have this particular event ID somewhere in my environment? Do I have this particular file executing somewhere in my environment, right? Sort of quick sanity check kind of stuff. If you want to do more advanced processing, one really good tool for it is Log Parser or Log Parser Studio. These are free downloads from Microsoft. Log Parser allows you to take the EVTX files that are on your subscription server or really on any of your Windows endpoints and query them, almost like a SQLite file, right? So you can say, give me this EVTX file and spit out anything that matches these 6 event IDs as a CSV, right? It's a good sort of reporting prep tool. Log Parser itself is a command line tool. It's really easy to write scripts around, so you can do scheduled tasks to automate a lot of this stuff. In the past, I've written scripts to do things like, you know what, just tell me all the new services that spun up on workstation endpoints in the last 24 hours, right, and email it to me. Then if something weird pops up, I'm aware of it. Log Parser Studio is the sort of IDE view into Log Parser. So you can use that to kind of visually build your queries and stuff, and then put them into Log Parser for use in scheduled tasks. And finally, Power BI Desktop. You guys aren't going to throw me out for talking about business intelligence tools, right? Power BI Desktop's another free download from Microsoft. You can take those CSV files out of Log Parser, put them into that and build all sorts of dashboards and reports, right? So if you're in an environment that is very metric and reporting heavy, this can be a really helpful tool for that. You can go straight from the events that you've collected to a log parser script to a dashboard that your manager is going to love and automate the whole thing. Super easy. If you don't necessarily want to analyze this stuff on your Windows box, on your subscription server, there's a lot of things that you can use to take those events and package them up and move them somewhere else. So probably one of the simplest is NXLog. NXLog is a Windows to syslog converter, essentially. So if you're using a traditional SIM, like say you've got a QRadar installation because you have a lot of money, just love spending. You can use NXLog to forward your Windows events into QRadar. You can also use it to send it into some sort of cloud SIM or whatever you have that can accept syslog input. It can be a little hinky about formatting, so sometimes you need to do some adjusting on either end of the connection. But it's nice. You know, it's a free tool. It's by the syslog NG guys. They certainly know what they're doing. So this might be something worth looking at. If you want something with a little more functionality, you can use OSAC or Wazoo or Waza, however you want to pronounce it. This is a host-based IDS tool. One function that it can perform is forwarding these Windows event logs. But you can also write rules in it to raise alerts on specific things in the logs. So if you see, particular event IDs that are problematic, it can raise an alert and tell you that something is going on. You can do the same thing for some file integrity monitoring stuff in there, for example. If a file's being changed in a particular directory and you told it you don't want any changes in there, it can raise an alert. WinLogBeat is the one that I'm going to demo later. Elastic, which is what the Security Onion sort of GUI and database stack is built around, they have a bunch of these log shippers, sort of lightweight log shipping agents called beats. WinLogBeat is named that because it's specifically for Windows logs. So you can install WinLogBeat on a Windows box, tell it which event logs you're interested in, and it will package them up and send them to a Logstash or an Elasticsearch instance. I don't know how much longer WinLogBeat is going to be around. Elastic is trying to consolidate everything into what they call Elastic Agent and sort of eliminate the beats, but they're not there yet. So for now, we're still using WinLogBeat. And then finally, OS Query. We'll talk about more on the next slide, but one of the things OS Query can do is collect Windows logs. That's right on the next slide, right? No, that's a little ways down. So, an advantage to OS Query is that it is kind of asymmetric, and it can be used better for remote systems than the standard Windows event collection stuff, right? A lot of this stuff is really optimized for server systems, and it's assuming that they're on all the time, and they always have direct connectivity to their subscription server. That's fine if you're a web server. That's less fine if you're a sales guy's laptop, right? With OS Query, you can sort of push the logs over whenever the OS Query endpoint or the fleet endpoint is available. So you can go longer times without synchronizing the logs. If you have a machine that's disconnected from the network for a long time and you're just using regular Windows event forwarding with it, it can get kind of hinky. The technical term, sorry. All right, so we've got all our logs in one place. Now we want to start writing some detections. Who has used Sigma? All right, still some hands. Excellent. So Sigma came from a really brilliant observation. Somebody noticed that every time there's a new detection that needs to be written, we are writing it for all the different detection engines, right? When something like WannaCry comes out, we're like, all right, well, I need to detect WannaCry in my environment, and I use QRadar, so I'm going to write a QRadar detection. Well, I use ArcSight, because I hate myself even more than you, QRadar guy, so I'm going to write it for ArcSight. And there was this huge duplication of effort going on because everybody was writing the detections individually, right? And maybe they weren't even the same detections. Maybe the one for one system would be really effective and one for another system would not be. Who knows? Right? This stuff was not being centralized or vetted at all. So somebody said, hey, we're going to write a meta language for detections, right? Where we will define the detection and then we'll put it through a Sigma compiler or Sigma C or Sigmac, however you want to say it, for a particular SIM or a particular platform. And then that will put that detection into place for that platform. So I can have one detection that says, if you detect, I think the example I use next is who am I running, then raise an alert. And then all I have to do is take that Sigma, compile it for my SIM, and put it into place. Everybody gets the same detection, and we only need to write it once, right? It's a lot like Yara. Think of it as Yara, but Yara for logs instead of Yara for files. We're looking for particular patterns in your logs, and we compile it for whatever format your logs are in. In the security onion world, Playbook is the module that we use for Sigma, right? We use Elasticsearch on the back end. So Playbook basically takes a Sigma rule, and we ship with several hundred of them, sort of a community repository thing. And when you put it into action, it takes that Sigma rule, converts it into an Elasticsearch query, and says, okay, this Elasticsearch query needs to be scheduled. It'll run against the Elasticsearch database with my log files in it. I believe it's every 5 minutes by default. And if anything comes up, raise an alert. Okay? So this is an eye chart. I am sorry. So this is what the who am I rule looks like, right? And there's a lot of tags in here, but the really important part is down here. It says, if you see a process creation log from Windows, that is to say, a process creation log generated by Sysmon, passed along as a Windows event log, and if that process creation log includes the original file name, whoami.exe, because Sysmon can identify an original file name versus one that's been changed by a threat actor, or if it is running a file that's straight up called whoami.exe, if either of those happen, that means that someone in my environment is running whoami. If someone in my environment is running whoami, there's probably something bad going on, because most users know who they are. Okay, I shouldn't say most. So this is something that should probably raise an alert for us. Another thing I just want to point out here is that it also gets tagged with the tactic and technique from the attack matrix, right? I know we've all seen MITRE ATT&CK beaten to death in these conference talks for the last couple of years, so I'm not going to belabor it. But you can use these rules to sort of fill in the gaps in your posture vis-a-vis attack, right? And if you've got everything tagged out and you say, okay, this is the TTP that I'm trying to address with this particular Sigma rule, it can give you some more visibility into your current gap analysis. All right, and then step 3, investigation, right? So this is a very sort of generic view of what our hunting interface looks like in Security Onion, called Security Onion Console Hunt. This uses the same Elasticsearch backend that you can also access with Kibana, right? The difference is we wrote this in-house, and it's specifically designed for speedy threat hunting. The idea is to use this in an active investigation. Kibana is really good for things like making a dashboard to go on that big screen in your SOC that's probably turned off now because everyone's working from home. But if you're doing actual investigation, we designed the Hunt interface for that. So in this case, we're saying, okay, anything on Win 2012 Web, that's our host name, group it all by the module and the data set. And then down here, we see the modules are all broken out by what kind of data is coming in. Is it a Windows event log data? Is it syslog? If this was also doing network telemetry, we'd see, Zeek logs and Suricata logs, if there's alerts, that sort of thing. And then event data set is what particular kind of event is in there. All right. So what this lets us do is take all of the data from these Windows endpoints, we put a subscription on them, we send it all to the subscription server, we put WinLogBeat on the subscription server, We fire it into Security Onion, and everything just gets parsed out neatly so we can see what variety of data we've got. My personal favorite is the one, I don't have a pointer. My personal favorite is the one down here that's got 11 hits, Sysmon DNS query. Has anyone seen that log type before? What does that do? Anybody? Yeah, so what and the process. That's the really cool part. So you don't just get the DNS record or the DNS request that's coming from the box, you actually get what process launched it, right? Which is super helpful when you're dealing with users, because you'll be like, why'd you go to Yandex today, user? They're like, I don't know, I was buying photos on Shutterfly, and that's all they know. All right. One other piece that I want to mention, I talked about this a couple minutes ago, but OS Query can be used as a log shipper, and it's a nice log shipper. Like I said, if you have disconnected endpoints, we have a feature in the Security Onion architecture we call a fleet node, where you can basically put an OS Query receiver out in your DMZ, and then anybody who is distant, who is not on the VPN, can still check into that to submit logs and stuff. It's kind of cool. In addition to its log shipping functionality, it also allows you to run live queries across your infrastructure. So this requires another endpoint agent, and I know everybody loves endpoint agents. But you can write sort of SQL-style queries to search for things across your entire enterprise. So if you find a malicious file on one server, you can take a hash of it and say, check this directory on everything else in my server farm and tell me if that hash is in there, right? So it's a super helpful research tool. It's not quite as powerful as Velociraptor in terms of doing actual remediation once you find stuff, but for investigating stuff, it's super helpful, super fast. All right, demonstration. Now, again, I recorded this, so I'm going to be pausing it and explaining what's going on. But if there's stuff that I don't get into in this that you want to talk about later, please feel free to track me down. I've got more onions, honest. All right, so before we get started, just to give you the sort of the cliff notes, this is a very simple demo environment. I have one Windows 2012 server, because that's the ISO I had. It's running Apache, and it is using Sysmon with the Swift on Security Sysmon config. It has PowerShell logging enabled. It's dumping all that stuff into event log, and then the event logs are being forwarded into a Security Onion instance via WinLogB. All right? So everything I'm showing you is completely like bone stock, no customizations, no special parsers, nothing that I wrote for this demo. This is all just regular out-of-the-box stuff. So when you log in, you'll see the overview screen here. When you click over, you see we've got 2 alerts, right? Because in most production environments, you're going to have at most 2 alerts. We have one for the security event log being cleared. That's the one that we talked about earlier. If somebody's clearing the event log, something's going on. And we have one for who am I execution. So the who am I execution is the one that we talked about earlier, right? The Sigma rule that says if you see who am I executing, raise an alert. These were both raised by Playbook, so these are both coming from Sigma rules. Okay, we click on our security event log cleared, and we hunt on it. That means we're going to open this up in our hunting interface. Scroll down a little bit. And when you scroll down, you'll notice all of the information about the alert, about the event, is coming through in these fields. Everything gets parsed out into an Elasticsearch index. All the attributes are in there for standard Windows events, Sysmon, all that sort of stuff. You see there, it's a code 1102. And if we look here, we'll see the raw data from the event. The audit log was cleared. The audit log was cleared by an administrator on the host Win 2012 web. So this is what we know at this point, right? I think I mentioned earlier, the log being cleared event does not come with any other forensic information around it. It's just telling you, hey, this was cleared. How was it cleared? I don't know, sunspots. It was cleared. So we need to do a little more investigation. We'll need to put this in our back pocket for later to figure out what exactly happened. Just imagine I'm explaining that whole part again. All right, so we close up that hunt and we go check the other one, the Who Am I execution. We open that in a fresh hunt window. Again, this is a playbook alert, so this came from a Sigma rule. And this one, you notice, is a little bit more expansive, a little bit more voluminous. The reason for that is this is not just a regular Windows event going, it got cleared. This is a process creation event coming from our friend Sysmon, right? So there's a lot more information here. Somebody ran the command line, who am I? It was run by, once again, administrator. So some administrator on this box ran who am I? Well, that's not good. If they're an administrator, they ought to know. But one of the things I really want to draw your eye to here is the current working directory here. Is that big enough for anyone to read it? I'm sorry? No, right here where it says current directory. htdocs. So we know that this server has Apache on it, and now somebody is running who am I from the htdocs directory. That seems problematic. So we need to dig in and investigate that, see if we can figure out what's going on here. All right, there's the other nice thing, which I'll mention here, is that Sysmon collects not just the process ID for the process that's executing, but also the process ID for the parent. So we can use that to sort of sort and slice and dice things. If we look down here, we'll see, yep, it's in C/xamp/htdocs. So we're going to, I should have paused it there, we're going to pivot on that. And we're going to say, okay, this who am I is running out of the htdocs directory. That means something bad is probably happening. But if something bad is probably happening, let's see what else is running out of the htdocs directory. So we say, okay, show us everything in my logs with a process working directory of C/xamp3/htdocs. Right? So we're not just looking at that one event anymore where who am I was run. Instead, we're saying, show me everything that ran from this directory. If this was a larger enterprise environment, as opposed to a single machine in a demo environment, we could always say, show me everything in this IP range, or show me everything on this particular server, or a server that matches this wildcard. If you work in one of those environments where the differentiation between dev and prod is actually just DNS names, not that I've ever worked any place that lacks, but it does happen. Then you could winnow it down that way. So what we're saying is, okay, give us the process working directory, and now we see, instead of just that who am I, we now have a count of 27 events that have run out of htdocs. It's not great. And we scroll down a little bit, and we see this process PID here. This is the process parent ID. We're going to group by that. And we're also going to group by process command line. So, and this is one of the cool new things I want to show you. So, if we look at this chart, just to bring it all together again, what do we have? We have everything with a process working directory of xamp3/htdocs. So this is all stuff that's running out of our Apache directory. First two things that says to me, either it's a compromised web application or it's a web shell, right? So this stuff is all running out of there. And we can sort it all by the process parent ID, so we can see what is launching all of these nefarious processes, and we can see the process command line. So this parent process launched the following command line so we can figure out what is compromised in our Apache installation. So we're going to get rid of event module from the chart and event data set because we don't need them anymore. And this is the new hotness. We just dropped this last week. And then we're going to flip it around and turn it all into a Sankey. So we can get a graphical depiction of the process tree on this box. Everything that ran from htdocs grouped together by the parent, and then we can see all the descendants. We find the one that looks particularly suspicious, looks like 2904. We flip that around to a Sankey again, and we actually get a list of all of the child processes that came from 2904, which we verified is our Apache HTTPD process, right? So now we know what we're dealing with. We have somebody who is relaying commands through our web server, either via a web shell or via some sort of compromised component. And so far, they ran Who Am I? They ran W event util clear security. So there's our security log being cleared. Now we figured out where that came from. They cleared the application log. They ran net users. They added a username backups, and they made that user an administrator. This was all being relayed through Apache, and we're able to hunt it all down because we're collecting those logs. We're putting them all in one place and normalizing everything and setting them up in a hunting GUI like this. So here is the full process creation record here. Shows us all our stuff. You'll see right there, again, verifying the parent image for that parent process ID of 2904 is XAMPP3 Apache bin HTTPD. So we verified that this stuff is all coming directly from the Apache instance running on this web server. So we found our web shell or whatever it is. We dig in a little more, we see that this is all being run under the username administrator because somebody installed Apache to run as administrator. It's awesome. So that's why when they ran that Who Am I, they figured they could do pretty much whatever they want and started adding users. So at this point, there's really kind of two directions we can go in the investigation. One is figure out where this web shell came from, or this compromised account, or whatever it is. And the other is what else was done while that web shell was installed, right? And again, because we're pulling all the logs in from this endpoint, we can get rid of our current hunt query, and we say, you know what? Show me any logs I have involving that htdocs directory. Because if there's something weird going on there, maybe it left a file creation log, or maybe it left a process creation log. Maybe there's something else going on in there that we can leverage to figure out where this is coming from. When we scroll down, we see, all right, we've got 27 process creation logs, which are the ones that we knew about. That's all the ones that are in that working directory. We've got 7 Suricata alerts, 1 playbook alert, and then at the bottom here, we have 1 PowerShell operational event log item. So because we have PowerShell turned on, or PowerShell logging turned on this box, it's doing script block logging, we can include that so that we're only seeing that entry. We scroll down, and there is our smoking gun. All right, so what is invoke web request? Oh, come on, I can't see anybody. Right, download through PowerShell. So, somebody logged into this box, they used PowerShell as sort of a wget, right? They pulled down what appears to be a PHP file called foo.php, and they wrote it out into our XAMPP3 htdocs directory under the name standard.php. We caught this because, again, we're doing PowerShell script block logging. So somebody logged in and actually did this in PowerShell, and we logged it. Super duper bonus question. You'll notice there was no file creation record for htdocs. Why do you think that is? I created that standard.php file, but it didn't get logged. Why? Very good. The default Swift on Security sysmon configuration does not include PHP files. So if you're deploying to something like a public-facing web server, make sure you review that sysmon configuration that you're about to put into production and make sure it covers all of your use cases, right? So there is our smoking gun. Now we want to pivot from here and say, okay, which admin got their account popped so I know what happened? It looks like it's Jimmy the intern. Damn it, Jimmy. Now we can pivot on Jimmy's name. Go back up to the top here. All right. And we're saying, okay, now get rid of the htdocs part. Just show me any PowerShell log stuff that involves our friend Jimmy here. Because again, we're ingesting all of those PowerShell logs into Security Onion so we can say, break them out, show me everything, and we're going to group by the script block text. So we scroll all the way down, continue scrolling, and we get this assortment of log entries. This is sort of a pro tip if you're using Security Onion. If you want to sort the stuff by timestamp, you can just throw a timestamp in there. You'll group it by timestamp, and you'll get everything in order. So everything that this person did after popping Jimmy's account, they ran a net user, they ran a get service, a get process, they did some reconnaissance stuff, they downloaded a web shell, and then they were out. And if we compare this to the timestamps in the other logs we looked at, we see that after they got this installed, everything else nefarious they did via the web shell, right? This was just the initial access. I don't have to pay Lockheed like royalties if I use kill chain words, right? This is their initial beachhead on the system, and then everything else was done via the web shell. So there's obviously a couple more steps to the investigation, right? If we have OS query installed, what we can do is we can say, hey, what's the MD5 hash or the SHA, I'm old, I still use MD5. What's the SHA-1 hash or the SHA-256 hash of that PHP file? Now, check all of the web servers in my environment, see if that web shell showed up anywhere else. Normalize a search from there and figure out if anything else got popped. What else did Jimmy's account do? Does Jimmy have account to anything else? Is there, God help us, a Jimmy admin account somewhere? And then you can, again, build that virtuous cycle, take the information that you found here, write new detections, add stuff to your playbooks, write some more Sigma, and figure out what's going on and make your defenses even stronger. So, 48 minutes in, we'll do a summary, and then I got a few minutes for questions. In summary, Windows has a shockingly robust logging infrastructure that not enough people take advantage of. Especially in the small and medium enterprise space, all of this stuff is free if you just turn it on. Yes, I know you'll get all of this if you just drive a dump truck full of money to an EDR vendor's house. But this is all stuff that you can do for free, right? Forwarding those logs into another platform like Security Onion or like a SIM, even analyzing on your subscription server with Log Parser, free, effective, very simple to set up. Sigma allows you to write these very granular platform agnostic detections, so you don't have to continue reinventing the wheel every time something new comes out. Just get the Sigma rule for it. You can push it everywhere. And finally, deploying OS query agents across your fleet. And I didn't really cover this in the demo because I only had the one machine set up. But deploying OS query objects or clients across your fleet will allow you to expand the hunt. Right? After you got that initial one, you figured out it was a web shell, you got the MD5 hash for it, then you can hunt for it everywhere else. Okay? And again, All of this stuff is completely free, really easy to set up. And I think that is it. So, I've got 9 minutes left. Who's got questions? Anybody? Yes. We do not support Raspberry Pi because it doesn't run on ARM. Everything runs on x86. My home install here, have an onion. My home install of Security Onion is actually running on like a Core i5 with 16 gigs of RAM. It was like $200 off Amazon several years ago. So it's for a home lab, it's not super heavy requirements. One tip I would mention: if you need a tap for home, like a network tap, if you search for Net Optics on eBay, they're usually super cheap and they're exactly the same as Ixia taps. They just rebadged. So I think I got an aggregating gigabit copper tap for like $25 or $30 on Amazon or on eBay. Yeah.
What do you do to try and reduce the size and log
the log files actually get gzipped on the back end, so they're relatively lightweight. Where people tend to run into issues with Security Onion is if they're doing network monitoring as well and they're doing full PCAP capture. If you're recording everything that's going across the wire, obviously that's going to eat a lot of disk space. We do support, and I'm happy to chat about this after if anyone wants to, we do support using BPF rules to exclude certain traffic. Like a lot of our customers don't bother recording port 443 because it's pretty much forensically useless anyway if it's all encrypted. So that might be something to look into. All right, anybody else? Uncoder.io, I do not. Oh, neat. Oh, that sounds super helpful. So he says uncoder.io is a translator for Sigma. So that would be handy. I really like Sigma. I think, again, I've been in defensive security a long time, and it's pretty rare for me to see something go like, oh, that actually moves the needle. And Sigma is kind of like, the first time I read about honeypots, that's actually a really useful idea that will help people instead of just continuing to run in place. So I'm a big fan. Anyone else? Come on, I got one onion left. So if you're doing this at home, the easiest way to do it is to use WinLogB, and you can install that. We have a download of the agent that's right on the console for Security Onion, so it's the proper version and everything. And then there's a text configuration file that says, these are the event logs that I want to forward. You turn on the service, and that's it. They just show up. Again, everything I demoed, all those parsers and everything were totally stock. That's just how it looks. So you turn the forwarding on, and you get all the pretty graphs and everything. Yep. All right. Well, if that is it, I will make room for the next person. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it.